This morning I wanted to discuss finishing off the back of a canvas. I'm pretty excited to get this one shown to a lot of people. I have a place I'm going to be taking it down to the human canvas this week so that it can be seen by others. Of course, I will also be posting prints available on multiple sites. I have been having difficulties with the Society 6 site. I'm hoping to resolve a lot of that and get this one out there and available for sale. I have had multiple videos and still photos with the work in progress over the course of the year 2020. Of course, it's finished in 2021. This painting, if you've been following me on other social networks, this is my rape series, Primal Scream. I do have some other videos on this channel that discuss a little bit about behind the scenes on it. So it's almost ready to go. It's complete, it's dry, it's 100% dry on the front. It's been sitting on my easel for quite some time. Last week or a couple weeks ago, I did finally get the edges painted. So I use gallery wrapped canvases, so it is ready to hang as is. What I'm going to do today is put a backing on it. Now, all that you really need to do is get some archival craft paper, but I'm going to use foam core today. You can also use mapboard, which is archival. It gets expensive. Foam core is less expensive. I also kind of like it because it's thicker. So on these larger canvases that I've been working on, I have to piece together. I don't have a large enough foam core for just one piece to be on there. So since I will be taping two together, the foam core is a little bit stronger so that it just doesn't warp with the mat board. I do want to add on that note, if you are purchasing artwork and the paper on the back tears, it doesn't devalue the artwork. I used to work someplace and so many people would get so uptight about the sheer fact that the paper on the back being torn. The paper on the back and the foam core, or whatever you're putting on the back, it's basically a dust collector. It protects the back of the canvas from dirt and oil over the years, so it can be replaced. That being said, a lot of artists, they will write on the canvas with charcoal or pencil. Some will paint. I've done that in the past, but recently I've just been notating in Sharpie on the actual canvas, the canvas bars, the stretcher strips. I have the gallery wrapped canvas, so it's nice. This is a nice wider area. It depends on the canvas that I'm using. Materials, of course, always play a part in what I decide to do. So I have to cut down the foam core, and once it's cut down, I'll be right back with you, and I'll explain some of the tools that would be needed for this as well. Okay, stay tuned. I have two pieces of my foam core already cut. I wanted to stop at this point and just tell you a little bit about what I have done. As you can tell, it's just a little bit warped. Let's put it down onto the canvas and you can see how that side is up. So I do want to tack this down for the next piece that I'm going to cut. Since I am putting two pieces together, try to get the cleanest ones possible. When you're doing this, even though I purchased a 36 by 48 canvas, that's just the approximate size that they give you. You do want to measure it. Now the short side is 36 inches, but just to give you an example, it's not quite 48 inches. It's hard to tell with the blanket that's underneath, but it's 3/16 of an inch off. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is you do not want to go off of your general dimensions. If you think something's 8 by 10, chances are it's not if it's a stretch canvas. Even you'll even run into these difficulties too with frames that you may purchase. It may be matted for a 4x6, but it's really truly not. I truly came into this problem whenever I was trying to purchase frames for my ACEOs. A lot of times they advertise that yes, it is 2.5 by 3.5 inches, but it's really not, and it's much smaller. So I ran into a lot of difficulties with that many years ago. Still run into it. That's why I bought a mat cutter and why I will often just custom cut mats for my ACEOs. Sorry, I digress. Back to the canvas at hand. So you always want to make sure that you have a tape measure, a pencil, of course. I have a T-square too, and you want an X-Acto knife. I just have a regular blade cutter that I've used for multiple things. I thought that the blade was new, and as you can tell on this Raggedy Cuts, it was not new. So this is going to be the piece that I'm going to be cutting down for the second piece. The other one, once I changed my blade, learned my lesson, I have that one ready to go. So this is going to be our main sheet, and then I am going to measure off a smaller one to finish off the back. Another thing to note, whenever you are measuring, you want to think as well about what you're going to be stapling the foam core onto. As you can tell, with this being a gallery wrapped canvas, there are the stretcher bars in here that the canvas is actually attached to. There are more of the support bars. Even just with the construction of a canvas, they have this, since this is larger, there's this support beam in there too, but we're not going to be attaching anything to that. That is just to keep the canvas from warping. But whenever we're attaching this foam core, number one, when you're measuring, you do not want to have it all the way to the edge. The reason being, for aesthetic reasons, you're going to see that edge whenever it's hanging on the wall, and you don't want to. You want this backer to be hidden. So you always want to make sure that whenever you're stapling it down, that it's in further. So you have a little bit of a lip, which is good. That's what you want. But then you also have to consider, whenever you're stapling, where that staple is actually going to go. So we're going to work with this, and I'll show you whenever I do begin stapling this down. So take into account your measurements. This was the canvas itself for this cut would be 36 inches. That's my cat General, by the way, if you heard him. It may be 36 inches, but I didn't cut the foam core to that. I cut it to 35.25 so that it had a little bit on each side less than what the actual physical canvas is. And I'm going to get cutting down the rest of this, and when I'm ready to staple, I'll be back with you. At this point, I have both of my pieces cut. Normally I like to tape them together before I staple them onto the back of the canvas, but as you can tell, what I suspected, the warping is causing an issue. So I'm going to need to staple down one of the pieces. I'm going to do the largest piece first, because in case my measurements were off due to the warping, I will be able to adjust and cut down the smaller piece a lot easier. So that's what I am going to do first. A couple of things to take into consideration when you're laying down your first piece. First of all, you want it to be square. So whenever you're lining it up, you also want to give that gap that I had mentioned before. Be mindful of the structure that's underneath. You also want to protect your painting. So I have this really nice, comfortable, soft blanket that I have my painting resting on, because whenever you're stapling, you're going to be adding some pressure. It's going to force the canvas down with that pressure whenever you staple it, and you don't want to have problems occur on the front side of your painting. So always make sure that you're not just putting it onto the ground. I like a soft, supportive with the blanket underneath before I begin stapling. Also keep in mind when you are checking to make sure that it is square, you're checking all the way across to the other side. And when I push that down, it's square as well. So now that that is good, I am going to lay in my first staple. That one tacks it down. And then I'm going to, because this one is so severely warped, I'm going to tack down the other side. I will need my hands free for that. I didn't want to set up a tripod, so I am just using my hands for my camera, but I'll be right back with you. I just wanted to show you the first couple staples that I put in. As you can tell, I have to apply some kind of pressure. This foam core, the original size, it's 3/16 of an inch thick. I normally buy a little bit thinner. This was down in my basement. I don't know how long ago it was that I purchased this. I'm trying to use up what I actually have before I go and buy new, but I traditionally try to get it a little bit thinner. Since this is thicker, I have to put down a little bit more pressure because of the depth of my staples. But you can see you want to start when you're stapling. I tack down the corners first, and then I move out a little bit, just like stretching a canvas. The next staples I'm going to do are from the center, and I'll go from the center out one way and out the other way. Likewise, whenever I am doing the sides, I am just going to go ahead and staple all the way down. Now with this stapler, I don't want, because there will be recoil, I don't want to just staple down single-handed. I will put the palm of my hand on this as well, just to make sure that it does not recoil and bounce back up, because it will. You do want it to bite into the wood, the structure of your stretcher strips. Okay, so once I get this side down, I'll be back with you. I wanted to add a little tip about cutting. This is my T-square, so whenever you do have everything set up, it's easier if you were to follow along with your pencil line and then your blade up against the T-square. That will help keep your lines straight. Also, you want to make sure that you're not cutting into the floor itself, no matter what your flooring may be, but you want to cut into another thing. In this case, I just use the scraps from my foam core whenever I'm cutting down mats. When I'm cutting the larger pieces for mats, I do the same. I just put another piece of mat board underneath. That way your blade lasts longer, because it's not cutting down into the floor and ruining that sharp edge. Just a little tip. My last piece is cut down. It fits good. Before I staple it in, though, I did want to mention one other item. Before we add our hanging hardware on, you want to make sure that you measure in how far it is to a solid piece of wood that you're going to screw into. It's easier for you to do it before you cover up the back. If you just guess, you could guess incorrectly. It could go down into this groove here. You could miss it completely. You're going to really tear up your backing. You're going to have to tear everything apart, go grab new ones, because your screw's not going to bite into anything, and you're not going to be able to hang it onto the wall. So I thought that I would mention that first to make sure that you do have it measured. These are the D-rings that I like to use, depending upon the size of your canvas, the weight of the canvas. This is a rather large canvas. It does carry some weight just from the support beams themselves. I'm going to be using the large heavy-duty ones and the hanging wire, which I'll show you those in a bit. For a lot of my smaller ones, I do use these smaller D-rings. They're well, both of them are very simple to use. The smaller ones just have one screw in there. The larger ones, because there is a heavier weight, I like to have the two screws. So we will get to that in just a moment, but always make sure just a reminder that you would measure in, write down if you can't remember what that measurement is going to be, because when we do get to the D-rings, attaching those, that's going to be a very important step. I'm at the stage now where I'm ready to add my D-rings onto the back so that I can get this ready to hang. As you can see, I wanted to show where the two pieces of the foam core met. Because of that warping, you can tell here, but I like to lay in a good amount of masking tape to connect those two. I prefer to use a wider masking tape, but this was all that I had, and so I just put several runs of it. When you are finishing the back of a painting, be mindful of where you are hanging this. If it's for a competition, I have done showings in galleries that were not that particular about the backing. However, whenever I would show with an art league, sometimes they would be more particular than galleries were. So please take that into consideration whenever you are doing the backing. If you're just doing this for yourself to hang on the wall, or you are restoring the backing for something that you purchased in a store, this is not going to be seen by anybody. This is just the back. This is up against the wall. It's to protect the artwork. That's its sole purpose. But there are some shows, some owners that would prefer something that appears a little bit more polished. That's just their preference. So always keep that in mind. But back to the hardware. These ones, I'm just using these D-rings. I'm not going to string any wire on it for this one because of its dimensions. I am just going to attach 2 D-rings, one on either side, and there would be 2 nails that would be needed in the walls in order to hang this. Whether you're stringing wire or you're putting the hardware down, you want it to be approximately a third of the way down. I say approximate, it does not have to be exact. However, whatever dimension you choose, you want to make sure that it's consistent, your measurements, on both sides, so that it does not hang crooked, especially if you are not applying wire. With wire, you can finagle it a little bit, but you can't with these D-rings. It makes it a little bit more tricky whenever you are hanging it on the wall to get the placement. It's not impossible. It's just that you may have to have your nails on the wall at a different dimension if you screw up with what's on your actual canvas. So you can see I have a little X that's marked here. I have my drill ready. There's some time in between the last take and this one because I had forgotten to charge my battery. You would think I've never done this before, but this is something that I consistently do every year for decades now. So I am more of a spur of the moment kind of person. Whenever I decide to do something, I don't plan that far in ahead. So whenever you have a rechargeable battery, you may need to make sure that you do plan ahead, especially if it's for a show. Thankfully, the batteries don't take that long to charge. So another thing for you to consider too, your screws, make sure that they're going to be deep enough to bite into the wood and it would be firm. It not just the tip biting into it, because as I had mentioned before, this canvas does carry some weight to it and you don't want it to fall off of the wall. If it falls off of the wall, it could potentially get damaged, and that after you spend all that time working on it, you don't want it to be destroyed. So I'm going to get busy, and another thing to make sure that you do know where your top and the bottom of the painting is. I've seen it happen before. My top is up here, my bottom is down below. So you want to have a third of the way from the top of the canvas. I've seen it happen before. Finishing hardware has been put on and it was put on upside down. So do be mindful of that fact. When I had mentioned earlier today as well, not only do you want to have your dimension down from the top of the painting, you also want to make sure that it's in enough that you will be biting into, if you remember, the thick part of the support for this canvas. Okay, and it really is that simple. That is it. Both of them are on here. I wanted to make sure that you also were aware there are two sides for the D-ring. You want to make sure that the flat flush side is facing the canvas so that you get a tighter fit to it. And this, of course, will be what your nail will hang on to whenever you have this on the wall. And she is ready for hanging. I would show you a little bit. This is my girl. She's ready to go. Stay tuned for more updates as to when she will be down at the human canvas and when prints will be available. You can always check that out on my website, www.jensequel.com. You can also search for me on pretty much all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, even started TikTok. So keep an eye out, and I will let you know whenever you are able to purchase prints. Thanks for watching, and I hope that this was helpful. This is probably my second tutorial video that is up, and I'm still ironing out the details, stepping out of my comfort zone to even create these. So thanks for listening to me babble. Have a great day.